Be strong and courageous. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. For the Lord your God will be with you wherever you go. And now, here's Reverend Sue.
Got joy in my soul. God is in control. I got Satan on my trail, but I'm singing all is well. He's attacking every day, but I'm watching while I pray. No matter the attack, I won't turn back.
Oh, good evening, and thank you for joining us this evening. I know everybody talking about it. Some people can't sleep. Some people don't know what to do. But on last Friday, June 24th, the Supreme Court overturned the Roe versus Wade, holding that there is no longer a federal constitutional right to an abortion. So as we speak, states have passed laws that ban abortion, while others have enacted strict measures regulating the procedure. Today, we have Dr. CR Gibbs, historian, and Dr. Gibbs is an author of 6 books and a frequent national and international lecturer on an array of historical topics. He's a graduate of Howard University here in Washington, D.C. So, CR Gibbs, we thank you. I look at your agenda last week, and you just so booked. You booked up with Juneteenth. You booked up with Roe versus Wade, and then you constantly doing so many different things, C-SPAN and all this. So I thank God that God has favored us to have you come on our show once in a while, and that's a favor from God. I just thank you so much for being obedient to God. So this has been, it's like really an amazing, just so much, it's just so much happening. So we look at the conservatives, pro-life, and pro-gun, assault rifle advocates. And then now we're looking at the whole point of abortion, and also about overturning the law. People are saying that Black women will be most impacted by the ban or abortion and healthcare, criminal legal system, politics. All this come to play. So will it affect African American as much as people are saying that would affect African American women? And I want you to talk a little bit about that, because this ban is going to, in my opinion, affect not just African American women. And I don't want us to get involved in all of this about just African American women, because we will be blind to what's really going on in this country in reference to what just happened on June 24th.
June 24th is a step in a process, a link in the chain, if you will, over a series of moves that were planned long ago. And the thing is that the Republicans did it, and they knew they did not have to have a majority of the American citizens behind them. That's the amazing thing. In fact, not only did they know that they didn't have to have a majority of American citizens behind them, but in truth, they are out of power in 2 branches of our government, and yet they're still, as the Post said recently, piling up wins. You know, they got the gun thing, they got the abortion thing. And we have to understand that, yes, we have all of this going on in SCOTUS, the court, and the Senate. But understand that the reason that this is locked in is because they began a program years ago to secure majorities in the state house. so that at that critical point in the process of making laws, that they knew all of this was going to devolve ultimately upon the states in one way or another, and that they put people in the Supreme Court. I don't understand. Susan Collins has got to be the most gullible person in the U.S. Senate. You see, because not only did she say she didn't realize that these people would lie to her, but that's a tactic that she has used before. That she didn't believe that the Republicans were going to do A or Republicans were going to do B, and only to find out, well, yes, they're willing to do anything they want in order to capture certain key points along the trail. And again, we see it happening at the Supreme Court. We see it happening in the Senate, but understand that they set out to capture it on the state level. We must understand that by capturing the state legislatures, and then by moving up to the governorships, you have a backup process, because you know which way you're going to cant the court. You know which way you're going to tip the court, and you're going to make it more conservative. All you have to do is get a simple majority in order to handle that. So that's done. Now we'll go to the Senate. Well, again, you don't have to have a majority. You have a slim minority. That is to say, if it's within 1 or 2 votes, even if the Democrats are in power, you need some Republican support. So what do? You deny the Democrats that Republican support, and you block Merrick Garland. You don't even allow that to come up for a vote when Obama was president. So they're doing a lot of things, and we're seeing the fallout right now. Will Roe versus Wade affect Black women? Well, unlike a young lady like you, Reverend Sue, I'm old enough to have existed before Roe. And in my neighborhood, I heard about Black women who had harmed themselves going to back alley abortionists because there was no other place for them to go. Now, with Roe took some of the weight off of that. There was care. It was instituted in part of health care in some respects. But now, with no protections, let's see, in every single state, in a majority of states, let me say this, in which trigger laws are going to be enacted, guess what? We have significant amounts of Black females, and they already weren't getting great health care to begin with. Now they're going to have to regroup and find ways to get abortions. Well, where are they going to go? Well, don't have enough money to go out of state. So we can kiss that goodbye, which means that we're back to the future. We are going to see more and more Black women who don't have the ability to pay the money to abortion shop out of state. We're going to see people who are going to go back to the old ways. Again, coat hangers, pills, if they can get them. And already CVS and other drug chains are putting a limit on the number of RU486 pills that are going to be available. All of this is going to affect Black women disproportionately, the same way it did before Roe. There is no question. And I'm sorry, Americans, memory is so short. I'm sorry that they don't remember the devastating. We estimate probably somewhere between 100 and 200 women a year likely died of illegal abortions before Roe. If that is the case, then I have no doubt that a disproportionate number were Black women. Moreover, when you have the director of health and this is a reflection of racism in general in American society, where we come up short. We may pay taxes, but we live in states that have historically underprovided critical care for us. And in Virginia right now, the state health director is saying, well, racism might have anything to do with health. Wrong now and historically wrong. But these are the kinds of knotheads that we're dealing with as far as abortion goes. Racism is a healthcare issue. I don't even know how you begin, how you can even begin to say stuff like that. And American health system, American medicine, is built on the bodies of Black men and women. I just one quick example: J. Marion Sims. J. Marion Sims, the father of American gynecology, built his reputation in the years before the Civil War by experimenting on Black women's bodies. Let me go old school, the most delicate regions of Black women's bodies. And he did it without providing any kind of pain medication, any kind of, and we know some of these sisters' names, Betsy and Anarcha, and he cut them in cases, some cases repeatedly, without giving them any pain suppressant. But he established his reputation as the father of American gynecology. So from those beginnings, and by the way, let me just say parenthetically, there were similar experiments conducted on enslaved Black men and women in the Caribbean as well. So to suggest that it's not going to bother Black folks, it's not going to bother Black women, it's not going to affect Black women. As the spigot is slowly turned off, there will be fewer and fewer places that Black women can afford to go. There will be a resistance in terms of appealing to the political structure. If you live in certainly conservative state in the South or West, you can knock on that door all you want to, but the one person they not going to help is a Black female.
Mm. So what I'm looking at, and going back to the criminal legal system itself, birth children, and it's still all over again. Black men, Black boys, Black girls getting into the criminal justice system and being a part of that life for so long. So we have it now, but it's going to increase tremendously, that I see, because it's also creating two Americas. And we have the two Americans right now, but it's creating more two Americans because you have really poverty, and now you have the one that can afford to do certain things that Black women, Black men are not able to do. So it increasing this whole idea of great America and seeing to America. So Clarence Thomas doesn't plan to stop where he's going. He's just put out something there, and he's not going to stop it. Comment on that.
No, he's not. And again, what he doesn't seem to really get is by constantly holding up the issue of what's called substantive due process. Right. He is opening the door. Again, and nothing he hasn't done. There are people who, they're conservative Blacks, who, why y'all always picking on Clarence Thomas? Because he has been part and parcel of a legal apparatus that has literally cut the legs out from under laws that sought to bring a fair chance to all Americans, and particularly Black Americans. Just one example, the Sullivan decision. I mean, ultimately, the court ruled it was okay to be handcuff prisoners. I mean, it's just, it is unbelievable. So now he's saying that substantive due process, which is essentially based on the notion that the 14th Amendment doesn't cover quite everything, and that we need to walk away from stuff not clearly enumerated in the 14th Amendment, that in fact we need to take another look at rights of privacy, gay rights, and we're supposed to take the word of the current members of the Supreme Court. Now, once we get Roe out the way, we're not going to look at anything else. I would not recommend that as a strategy for Black people. I would not recommend that at all, because Thomas, to give you an example, Samuel L. Jackson, the actor, apparently texted Thomas the other day and said, well, how you feel about the repeal of Loving versus Virginia, which is the decision that gave us interracial marriage. Now, there are some folk, Thomas protectors. Why are they always dumping on Thomas? Because by constantly bringing up substantive due process, he is, again, opening the door. Folk are working years ahead. And while he might be willing to cut back on personal privacy, he might be willing to cut back on gay rights, there are other people, some of whom have publicly stated, let's take a look at interracial marriage. And that affects him, obviously, because he's now married to a white female. But he doesn't seem to understand that he is a stalking horse, an old term, into areas that, while he may not want to go, there are other people on the court and in our political system that have no problem going back to 1922. No problem at all.
Well, it's obvious. Well, it's obvious that that's where they're trying to move to, that particular time, 1920s, 1930s. Because if we start really looking at what's happening right now, and the reason is you are so important as a historian, because you bring the history to us. You remind us that don't forget about what happened in the past. That's history. Pro-life, and we talk about pro-life and pro-birth. Is the pro-life movement really pro-life, or is it just pro-birth?
It is, and I knew this thing was going to come back up, because we had it was there in the 70s. To Republicans, life, the right to life, starts at conception and ends at birth. Because when you look at the justice system that they promote, obviously, and it continues to be racist and unfair and unduly harsh. So yeah, they're all for from conception to birth. Then after that, you're pretty much on your own. And I'm noticing people are bringing that old statement back, because there is a lot of truth to it, from the moment of conception to the moment of birth. And that's pretty much it. When we look at, again, going back to the states, unequal access to all forms of healthcare and criminal justice. And again, we got this crazy person in Virginia saying there is no relationship after documented proof. There's a man in Virginia named Dr. Walter Plecker, who came up with one of the most racially coded health systems in the country in the early 20th century, and based on racial categories, based on putting Black folk and Native Americans in one thing and separate and putting white folks in a basket. Dr. Plecker's work still haunts us, and in my judgment, his racially discriminatory health system in Virginia is evocative of what's going on there now. Again, when you have the head of medicine for the state of Virginia saying, there are no linkages. No, the linkage is structural racism. stuff that is baked in, the same stuff that Youngkin doesn't want young people to be exposed to in critical race theory, structural racism. And for him, but what can we expect from Youngkin when he is a man who got to run the government of the Old Dominion by criticizing a educational program that was not taught anywhere in any Virginia public school? But that's the fear of the diversity, equity, and inclusion that motivates so much of what we see here today.
Mm-hmm. George Bush Sr. and George Bush Jr. and Trump placed judges on the Supreme Court, who voted to take away a woman's ownership of her own body.
Mm-hmm.
Elections have consequences. Over and over and over and over again, we say that. How important to African Americans is the upcoming midterm election?
Amen.
And over and over again. It's so important. It's so important. Dr. Gibbs, I ask this question all the time, and it's like bothering me. It keeps bothering me and bothering me. Is that what can religious organizations do? What can churches do? Isn't it time to start teaching our people about history? Come in.
It is. I won't mention the name of a competitor of yours. I was on this program a few weeks ago. He was telling me the young boys are saying today that if it, it's about the money. And if they're not going to put money in their pocket, they're not involved. They don't have any interest in that. That is a suicidal kind of thought for Black people. We must have our faith institutions become more involved. The day that we thought we could be so elevated that we did not have to get involved in the real dirtiness of politics, that's long gone. Moreover, in our community, it is anti-historical. When we look at matter of fact, there's a new book out on a new autobiography out on him, Raphael Warnock. Raphael Warnock out of Georgia comes straight out of the church. His daddy comes straight out of the church. These are people who ought to remind us, if we were still reading, that we have to look to the church. We don't have alternative institutions that can help us ascend politically. Now, maybe other folk do, but we talking about us. And in a Black-centered reality, we have to, it is, again, criminal if we do not involve our faith leadership in a proactive, historically knowledgeable battle against the forces of ignorance and bigotry that exist now in the United States. This is not to say they've always been there, but they are just like a roller coaster. There have been periods of when they ascended and periods when they descended. This is a period of ascent. And when we look at some of our best leadership, I'm afraid it's not out of corporate Black America. It's not out of the intellectual quarter. It's still in the ability to mobilize people around issues. Our faith community cannot walk away from its historic responsibility.
Mm-hmm. Thank you. We need part 2, part 3, and part 4. So you can look at your calendar. Again, we ran out of time. So tell us about how we can contact you as far as your lecturers and okay.
The best thing to do, simplest thing to do is to go to portofharlem.net, portofharlem.net, PORTOFHARLEM, just like the district in New York mm-hmm. City, Harlem. And you can look up my schedule. I think they just recently put a podcast I was in where I moderated a panel on Black fatherhood. I'm also in 2 documentaries streaming right now. One is on Netflix called Rise Again, Tulsa in the Red Summer. And then I'm in a documentary that is streaming on Discovery Plus and Science called The Secret History of the Underground Railroad. So those are ways that you can get in touch. You can see my work if you go to portofharlem.net or straight to portofharlem.net/C Gibbs. You can download articles that I've written, interviews, and so forth.
Thank you so much. And to our listeners, thank you for taking the time to be with us. But also, let's look at history. Let's look at history. Because when we start studying history, there's nothing new. There's absolutely nothing new when it comes to African American. And vote. Please vote. Dr. Gibbs, thank you so much for taking the time to be with us today. And we have to continue our conversation in the near future so we can just learn and be intelligent to do the right thing.
Because I'm at your service, Reverend Sue. Whenever you call, you know I'll come.
Thank you so much. May God bless you.
Thank you. Same to you.
Things are moving